So what I want you to imagine is that when you take in this food, when you eat this food and you have belly fat, the food almost pummels in to feed the fat first. So I want you to think that the fat cell is hogging those calories that you're taking in. So the food that you eat, it goes into the fat, and then the body, the cells that should be getting that energy aren't getting it. So then we're ravenous and we're hungry and we think, well, why am I hungry here? I've just eaten. Well, physiologically, your body's almost starving.
Welcome to the Dr. Ashley Show.
Welcome to the Dr. Ashley Show. I'm Dr. Ashley, and today I've got a guest with me. This is Lisa. She's one of our certified PhD consultants and team leader of one of our offices. And today what we're going to talk about is all the questions that you guys have posted. So if you're listening to this on a podcast platform, come over to YouTube and leave a comment, leave a question so that in future episodes we can tackle it and talk about it. You can also follow me on social media at Dr. Ashley Lucas. It's Dr._Ashley Lucas, and ask questions there, and we'll compile them and do another Q&A just for you. So today we are going to talk about belly fat. I talk about belly fat in a lot of previous episodes. We tackle belly fat a lot in our clinics at PhD weight loss clinics. And so today we're just going to dive in. So what's the first question, Lisa?
It's the most common one that we get, and it says, can you explain more about belly fat and hormones and how one targets belly fat specifically?
Yeah, so I talk about belly fat in a lot of the previous episodes, but the belly fat is also called visceral fat. And what happens is we have these triggers in our life and they change the way we tolerate our food. So a trigger for a lot of ladies that we see come in the office might be like menopause, pregnancy. For men, it's usually something majorly stressful, job change, relationship change, just general aging, and something changes about the body and you start to pack on the fat. And we see this with our clients all the time. They pack it on in the belly, and this belly fat is different than the fat throughout the rest of your body. Because what happens is it fills up in the organs, it wraps around the organs, it squeezes the organs tight like a straitjacket. And over time, that fat in the belly grows its own blood vessels, gets its own oxygen supply, and then starts to secrete hormones. And the hormones are there to help encourage its growth. It's like an entity in and of itself, and all it wants to do is grow and get fatter as fast as possible. So some of the hormones that it secretes is interleukin-6, and interleukin-6, right, is the major inflammatory hormone that's linked to cancer and a whole host of negative health consequences. It secretes aromatase, and for you men out there who are listening to this, aromatase takes your testosterone, converts it into estrogen. So the more estrogen that you have, you're going to find that you accrue fat more in the belly and the chest and the throat area. And we see our clients with that type of fat deposit have real high risk of high blood pressure and sleep apnea. So this is a beast, and all it wants to do is grow. And so oftentimes we think that we are eating, and as a result, we're getting fat. But actually, we are eating because we're getting fat, right? So the overeating isn't making us fat. Because we're getting fat, we're overeating. So what I want you to imagine is that when you take in this food, when you eat this food and you have belly fat, the food almost pummels in to feed the fat first. So I want you to think that the fat cell is hogging those calories that you're taking in. So the food that you eat, it goes into the fat, and then the body, the cells that should be getting that energy aren't getting it. So then we're ravenous and we're hungry and we think, well, why am I hungry here? I've just eaten. Well, physiologically, your body's almost starving. You're kind of malnourished because the fat's getting all of the important vitamins and minerals and calories. It's kind of like when you have a baby, and the baby's going to take everything for you. The mom comes out totally depleted, but the child's perfect. And so your fat mass in there is perfect. It's getting fed everything that it needs. So that's the deal.
My question also is, can you get rid of the belly fat?
Yeah, so just the belly fat. A lot of people do ask, can you spot reduce? If I've got belly fat, can I just get rid of it? And I was just talking to one of our celebrity clients, and he's 70, 75 years old, and he's got fat just in the belly. And he knows that for him, his brain, he wants his brain sharp, he wants to live a long time, and he knows that this visceral fat is correlated with brain degeneration and all of these negative health conditions. And so he went before visiting with us to a plastic surgeon and asked the plastic surgeon if he could get rid of the fat by sucking it out. And the plastic surgeon was like, no, all your fat is deep down in the organ. So if we were to take a slice of this guy's liver, it would look like a Kobe beef steak, you know, the marbling in and around the delicious steaks. Well, that's what your organs look like if you're carrying this fat. So the plastic surgeon said, no, sorry, we can't help you. And so now he's with us and we're going to help him drop the fat. But the thing is you can't just drop the belly fat. I go on Google and I see these ads all the time and they're like, eat these 3 foods to target your belly fat. It is bogus. It's bunk. There's no supplement that's going to just drop the belly fat. What you've got to do is drop total fat percentage. You've got to release all of the fat, because another interesting thing that I found over the decade that I've helped thousands of people drop weight is that we lose weight in the opposite direction that we put it on. So if you put it on in your belly first, which a lot of people do, then the belly fat is going to be the last to go, right? And we see this with our clients, right? Their face starts to thin, their arms, back, legs, and it comes off of your belly proportionately. But usually that last chunk is the belly fat. And one thing I didn't mention about the belly fat is that because it secretes hormones, it's like a tumor. All it wants to do is grow, is that if you don't get rid of it completely, then it just comes back, right? So we always tell our clients that if you just drop a portion of the excess fat weight in the belly, it's like a weed, shaving the top off of a weed and leaving the root. You know it's going to come back. And so that's the biggest thing with this fat is if you've got belly fat, you have got to go all the way. You've got to fully collapse all of the fat mass in there so that you actually have a chance of maintaining the weight loss.
All right, we have another question.
Yeah.
All right, is there a difference between belly fat and other fats, such as in your legs and your butt area? You mentioned visceral fat, which seems to equate to belly fat, which most of us have. But there are other areas where fat is deposited. Is that visceral fat as well? And does it need to be eliminated as much of the belly fat?
So that's a great question. The visceral fat is a different type of beast. So it's not the type of fat that's in your butt or your hips or your back. That type of fat is more like the subcutaneous fat, and it really isn't metabolically active like the belly fat. The fat around the heart, though, the pericardial fat, is not good. And the reason why is because it does, many reasons, but one of the main reasons why is because it wraps around the heart like that, and the heart can't perfuse the rest of the body like it should. It can't get the blood to flow. It has to work really hard. And there's actually a study that recently came out looking at pericardial, that heart fat, and male pattern balding. And the reason why is because the blood can't get to the extremities, can't get to your nail beds, it can't get to your legs. And so we see those tender little blood vessels and the follicles start to die off. So if you have noticed that you don't have hair on your legs anymore, could be from the visceral fat. If you notice balding or hair thinning, that could be from the pericardial and visceral fat. If your nail beds aren't healthy and pink on your fingers and your toes, that could be from visceral fat. All in all, the belly fat, the heart fat is not healthy, but the stuff that's in your hips and your legs is a little bit different. You still want to have a healthy level of it, but it's not as detrimental.
All right. How do you know when you've reached the point of having zero visceral fat? And how do you distinguish it from maybe a stretched abdomen from having a baby?
Yeah. So the visceral fat, you are always going to have a little bit of it. I always say about a pound. You don't want any more than a pound of visceral fat. And there are some different ways to actually measure it. There is an MRI that you can get, and I'm learning more about this. So as I learn more, I'll let you know. You can get a CT scan, and most often when you get a CT scan, the doctors don't even look at the visceral fat in there, but that's a good way to look at it. And it's probably more harmful than anything else they're looking at in there. So they should take that into consideration. And then there are body composition scales. We use them in the office. The one that we like is a Tanita, and it does measure visceral fat in there. Probably not 100% accurate for sure, but gives you a good idea of where your starting point is and where you need to be. We've done 1,000 of these body composition analysis. I mean, probably 10,000 of them plus. Yeah, so we have an idea, a very good idea as to where your body needs to be for visceral fat. But something that you can do at home actually is you can lie down on your back and relax your stomach. If your stomach protrudes up, then you know you've got a decent bit of visceral fat. But if it just sinks down, then all the subcutaneous fat, the non-harmful stuff, is going to fall over to the side. Any scarring will kind of fall over and sink down. But if you do lay down and you see that protrusion, then you better bet that you've got visceral fat you need to drop. And, another reason why you want to get rid of that is because visceral fat is linked to increased risk of cancer, like I mentioned, because of interleukin-6. And also, what's interesting about the visceral fat cell is that it takes up natural T killer cells. These natural T killer cells are what helps to fight against cancer. And the visceral fat cells take them up and destroy them. So this is your first line of defense, your natural best defense against cancer, and your visceral fat comes around and just destroys your best line of defense there with fighting cancer.
What foods should you eat to eliminate this visceral fat?
Yeah, so like I said, there are no foods that really just trigger and hit the belly fat, but there are certain foods that help promote the accrual of more belly fat. And the number one thing is your processed carbs. So anything that's going to spike your glucose and your insulin levels, remember that insulin is a hormone that promotes fat storage. So you want to keep insulin as low as possible. And these processed carbs that don't have much fiber in it, have a lot of sugar, these are going to be what really spikes your glucose and just goes in there and pummels in to feed the fat first very easily. So processed foods that I'm talking about, this would be like cereals, oatmeals. It would be oat milk, for example. I just chatted with a client who always gets double oat milk in his latte. That was the first thing that I had him quit, and I had him go to some half and half or heavy cream instead. And he thought, what? But it's also so delicious, isn't it? And then I'm talking about potato chips. I'm talking about processed white breads can do it. What else? Muffins, cakes.
What about like alcohol and things like that?
Yeah, alcohol is big. The deal with alcohol is that one shot stops fat burn for about 4 to 8 hours. 2 shots or 2 drinks knocks you out of fat burn for a few days. And the reason why is because the liver is in charge of burning fat. And it's like it can't really multitask. It does a lot of things, but I want you to imagine this. In simple terms, it can't multitask. So if you are drinking alcohol, all it wants to do is burn off that toxic type of poison energy. And it's a pretty clean source for it to burn in its toxic ways. So it works on doing that. And then everything that you eat in conjunction with that alcohol goes and stores in the belly fat. So beer, oh my gosh, is kind of like liquid bread, and it does cause belly fat gain if you've got belly fat there because you've got the alcohol portion, you've got the yeasty, quick-acting carbohydrate, and the alcohol goes into the liver, and the quick-acting carb goes into your fat store. So if you really want to drink alcohol, it's still going to blunt fat burn, whatever you do, but if it's worth it to you, but you want the best type, probably a dry wine and really minimal amounts. If anyone has told you that you have an alcohol problem, if you think you might have an alcohol problem, you probably do. And it's best to let it go because it's not serving you in many ways, but specifically in the belly. And then I would say hard liquor like tequila or vodka in a club soda with maybe a lemon or lime. That would be your best bet. Stress is also something that you've got to manage because when you have high levels of stress, you increase cortisol. Cortisol is your stress hormone. And what cortisol does is it can actually take fat that is located in different areas of your body and pull it in and mobilize those fat cells into the belly fat. So stress also reduces insulin sensitivity. And remember, insulin is that hormone that opens up the fat cells. And so we just want our bodies to be sensitive to insulin. We want to be able to utilize that energy that we're taking in and burn it as fuel rather than store it as fat. So stress is huge there. And then the last thing is sleep. Sleep is a very big deal when it comes to keeping your belly fat as low as possible. If you sleep less than 6 hours a night, then you're going to be at higher risk of accruing more of the belly fat. And then if you want to do some unique things that can help, I would say cold plunge or getting in a cold shower. Whenever you have the opportunity to hit up a sauna, you could do that because that helps with blood flow. And then just getting adequate sleep and keeping your stress low, I'd say. Okay, well, that wraps up this episode. Thank you so much for your awesome questions. Thanks, Lisa, for being here. I hope that we answered them well for you. If you're listening to this on a podcast platform, come over to YouTube and ask your questions. We'll do more Q&As. I hope that you got massive value here. If you are listening to this on YouTube, please subscribe. And if you're on a podcast platform, please leave a review, and we'll see you on the next show.